Welcome to a special edition of Huddle Up. We are honored to have with us Rob Davis, who has recently joined the Las Vegas Raiders. Thank you, Rob, for being here. Also with me, Rob Clock, the usual right-hand man who drives the ship here. I also want to thank our sponsor, today's sponsor, Blue Ridge Risk Partners, Jeb Keller. And we really appreciate him supporting the program, supporting RR4L and all that. Rob, I want to jump right into it. I mean, you've gone from a red Raider to a black and silver Raider, and talk about that your current role, what you're doing with the Raiders, and how that evolved.
Well, first, I'd like to thank you guys for having me on. It's great to see you, Fran and Rob. Some fond years back at Shippensburg, and everyone knows I'm a Red Raider for life. So your title is definitely apropos with me. That was a great 5.5 years there at Shippensburg. I felt like I went from a boy to a man, coming from Washington D.C., and never thought I'd end up in college. And I remember pulling up in there, it was horse and buggies riding through town, and I was like, Mom, where are we at? I literally showed up August 15th, 1987, and it was the first time I had been there, and it's left a lasting memory. And so, thanks a lot for having me on.
Oh yeah.
It's been a full circle for me as far as a career move. As you know, I was fortunate enough to get 12 years in the NFL. I had 14 tryouts. Was unsuccessful in those two with the Jets early on out the gate when I first left Shippensburg, and I made it into the CFL in 1995 with the Baltimore Stallions, where we won the Grey Cup. And I finally made it in 1996 with the Chicago Bears and played there for a year and finished my last 11 years out with the Packers in Green Bay there, and immediately transitioned into player development, it was called at that time. And basically, we have football coaches and then we kind of have life coaches. And so then Commissioner Paul Tagliabue thought players were having a struggle transitioning from college to the professional ranks. And so they put player development in place with the four pillars being continuing education, trying to help guys finish their education, financial education. Not sure if most people know this, but those that you see on Sunday, most of us are from humble beginnings, from poverty to about middle class. Unfortunately, not a lot of rich folks' kids make it to the NFL. Third component is post-career development, right? Every player is going to be or used to be at some point. And so we try to prepare them for life after football. And then the fourth piece, which we don't talk a lot about, is the mental health side of it. The mental health services, what the players go through, both in the game and more importantly, what they go through when they transition out. And so what I try to do is teach what I call the game within the game. As we know, every player that shows up here to the NFL knows how to play football. They just never been pro football players. And so I try to take my locker room experience and my post-career experience and package it all into one to what we call the game within the game and try to help those young men get their careers off the ground.
Those young guys, do they hear you? I mean, do you have a hard time, like as far, young guys, and you're not that old, but you're older. Is it hard to get that message through to them?
Not really. It's never been that difficult. And it goes back to my time in the locker room at Shippensburg, right? I've been in locker rooms for pretty close to 4 decades, and to have the ability to speak the language. I have shared experiences. I was in there. I earned my respect to get voted a 10-year captain there in Green Bay. So it's fairly easy creating those relationships. The programs is what I call the four programs, the pillars. That's the floor, in my opinion. The ceiling is the relationships.
Hmm.
Uh, and as you can tell just by our alumni base here at Shippensburg, if there's nothing else we can do, we can build relationships that are last long time, lifelong friends. And so I just take that approach when I'm trying to help these men. I have nothing to do with whether or not they're on the team, how much money they make, how much playing time they get. So I'm really a resource that is here to really help them extend their careers and get as much out of it as they can.
Nice.
Nice. That's impressive. And Rob, I got to say this. This is an honor for me just to sit with you, one of my former teammates, and just the amount of success that you've had. I have to say this. He was a little younger than me, Fran, but when he came in, he scared us. He's on the D line. We're looking over going, look at this kid. Like, holy crap. So But great seeing you, great catching up. We got a chance to talk a little bit earlier, but so here's my first question for you. So you earned numerous honors in your years at Ship. Talk about your time as a Red Raider. Like, what really stands out to you? And I know there's a lot of them, but what were some things that really stood out with your years in Shippensburg?
Uh, there's so many, Rob, to be honest, and I'm gonna try to narrow it down because I know we only have a limited amount of time. I first have to start with the relationships, the coaches' relationships, the campus as a whole, as far as people that worked in the cafeteria, the financial aid office, professors throughout campus, Diane Jefferson, just so many, Dr. Setia, Don Gracie, Tommy Hoy, just so many relationships over the years. And then we had a tight knit, I tell guys today that you don't go to Shippensburg back then to go pro. I really came there to get an education with the hopes of going into the Secret Service. It was never my intention to go to the NFL. As you guys may know about my story, I never received a letter to go to college, not even from Shippensburg. I
Oh,
was
didn't
truly a
know.
walk on. I showed up there 6'2", 100 and I think I was 203 August 15th, 1987, and that was a year removed from high school. So just think if I'd have came there immediately when I got out of high school in '86. I remember Bob Canny and them guys trying to find a position for me, saying, "Well, what position do you play?" Well, in high school, I was an offensive lineman, and so they probably not going to play O line at 203. Started me on defense, and I happened to get hurt that year. And being a walk on, they didn't give me much treatment. And Heckler probably don't like to hear that, but they just kind of iced me down, and I was able to redshirt and grow a little bit and mature body wise a little bit, and come back out in the spring and start my career as a fifth string defensive tackle in the spring of '87, '88 going into '88 season. And somehow I came out of camp as the starter, and I guess the rest is kind of history from there. But I would just definitely say just the relationships, Rob. It was a great time to be a college student athlete. We didn't know what we didn't know. You would have thought we were like Florida State, Notre Dame, Alabama, as big time as we thought we were. But we used to hate on the guys that played at 7 o'clock at night. We played noon games, as you know, and we'd be like, "Oh, I could play there. Oh, I could play there." So that might have been the keg beer we were drinking by that time.
Talk about Don Gracie. I think a lot of us have special memories of Dr. Gracie, and I know you guys had a special bond.
Oh man, that's my guy. That's my guy. He's my big brother, surrogate father, uncle, best friend, weight room buddy, shit talker. He covered it all. And still to this day, I still communicate with him. Just got a picture of him the other day. Like most of us, getting old kind of sucks a bit. But he's hanging in there. His mind is still very strong. He can recap like no one's business, but his body's giving up on him a little bit, but still a great friend. We still kind of connect probably once a month. And that friendship has gone on since 1987. Great guy. As close as I am to him and was to him, I only ever got a C in his class. Wasn't giving up no grades over friendship. You better
Not cutting you. Not cutting you, but break it all. So I want to ask you this one, Rob. So I'm doing a little bit of research, which I don't do a lot of research for this podcast. And I was looking up your info on the Hall of Fame, and then I'm kind of scrolling through, and I'm looking at the number of Hall of Fame guys who were on that '92 team. So there was Coach Mack, right? You played with him. Ken Pickett. If I'm wrong on any of these, tell me. John Pettyjohn
Yep.
and Howie Garini.
Yep.
And there's one more. Who was it? Ron Johnson?
No, Ron was younger than me. Was
Oh, he was
What about Shane Maines?
Shane Maines.
Shane Maines, Jeff Fickus,
Yeah,
uh,
Fickus. That was,
Marini.
yep.
Well, maybe Fickus's last year was '91, I believe.
But I got to tell you that the defensive guys, that's a murderer's row of defense. I mean, talk about that unit. Talk about that year. What was it? '92 was the year you guys won the championship.
Yeah, it was great, and just some of the big wins we had over the years. The IUP win, obviously, my redshirt freshman year in '88. It was about 30 years before we got those guys again. Ironically, they hired a personnel vice president here who was an IUP guy.
No.
I kind of squeezed his hand a little tighter than normal. Like, okay, IUP, huh? And
Definitely.
so, yeah, so we just had a great group of guys. We brought in guys like Walter Davis and Montoya Turner, and
Oh, yeah.
obviously what Mac was doing. Mike Massey, another young player on that line, Al Cormier. We had some really good D linemen over the years, and I know I'm the one that made it to the NFL because of my snapping ability. And I tell people all the time, I wasn't the best defensive lineman on that team. I had some really good players on there. Walter Davis and Mac, and Mac was one hell of a player. If we could just get him to stay on sides, he's going to give you about at least two a game.
Get a little jump.
Give you two personal fouls a game. So you figure Walt B and Mac, we had our share of penalties on that D line for sure.
Well, you weren't too bad because the one stat that I saw, 353 most tackles by a defensive lineman in school history. That's a lot of tackles.
That's impressive.
Tackles on it. That's one I don't know if anybody's going to catch. You got to average about 80 some tackles a year, and it's just too many good players on defense for a D lineman to get that many tackles. And some guys, I know Kenny Pickett and Shane had a bunch of tackles as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to remember back then it wasn't this wide open offense, Rob, and them guys. Right. If you're playing quarterback today compared to back then, they're running fullback. The Scott Hileys and the Ken Rocks, and
Mm-hmm.
so running backs are getting 25, 30 carries a game back then. So it wasn't much throwing being done.
You were probably on the field the whole time too. Did they swap out linemen at all just to get?
No, not really, not a ton. We may have had maybe my first couple of years we were in like a 50 front. Then when Coach Reese got there, we went to like a 4-3.
Mm-hmm.
And so we probably had a rotation of about 7 guys.
All right, so I'm curious, what was the transition like from a D2 school like Ship to NFL player? What was that like?
Oh man, there was a lot of eye-opening moments. So I came in as a long snapper and defensive lineman, and so you remember, aside from I think maybe IUP, we only played like one game on turf.
Mm.
And I remember like walking into Three River Stadium, and I'm looking at in homecoming I get 4,000. And I'm walking into Three River Stadium, and my foot got caught in the turf, and like down goes Dave. And the guys was like, "Rob, man, you're really from the California Penal League. Like, you never flew on the plane except for when we went to Portland State.
Portland State, yeah.
Bus rides, all over. We dreaded the Edinburgh trips every year.
Mm-hmm.
So it was different. The speed of the game was a lot different. I still think I could have played defensive line in the NFL, but when I came in an era where they were going from a backup doing the snapping to just snapper only, and I just never really got into the rotation of it. I was what they would call a tweener, I guess. Not quite athletic enough for DN, not quite stout enough for D tackle at this league level. I do remember playing in some preseason games, playing some D line, and getting some pressures. And I think I had a sack of Neil O'Donnell.
Nice.
And so, one of the things I did learn from some veteran guys is don't fall for the pump fake, right? Rob Clark goes and pump fakes it, right? And of course, at Shippensburg, we throw our hands up.
Yep.
Remember, I think Ray Brown from, I think he was with Washington at the time. We were playing in the preseason against Washington, and they had Riley McKenzie, Ray Brown, and those guys. And so they still had the starters, and at the start of the second half, with really rookies playing against them. And so I went for the pump fake like this, and I want to say I think he caught me in the air, shook the change out of my pocket, threw on the ground, and then landed on top of me, and I just woo, woo. and one of the linemen says, "Don't jump, yeah, so just the speed of the game, obviously the travel. We play in front of 4,000 or 5,000 maybe at homecoming. I may be pushing that number a bit, to 70,000, 80,000.
Yeah.
In front of the Super Bowl. And
I was going to say the Super Bowl, that had to be just amazing.
Oh, it was unbelievable. We lost the game, but you want to just talk about excitement and fear and energy and all those things in overdrive. I say this now, but my biggest fear was screwing something up out there that I couldn't recover from, right? I used to always say, I just want to be able to walk the mall at the end without them saying, there he is right there. He caught. At D-line, you can miss a sack, you can miss a
Oh yeah.
tackle. There's 11, 10 other guys. But when you're a specialist, you get one shot, right?
Mhm.
There's no mulligan, right? And the world only notice you if that shot is kind of messed up. And so all the way up until the age of 40, I was just like, man, I just want to be able to walk the mall. Simple as that without them. And I remember the baseball player who for I believe the Red Sox, when the Sox finally won the World Series, and they showed that over and over.
Oh
They
yeah.
showed Scott Norwood every year.
Oh yeah.
That time this guy was probably 60 years old. He cried like a baby.
Yeah.
Just think that had been haunting him probably for 35 years.
Mhm.
That one slow roller that got through his legs there down the first base line. And so
Yeah.
those are some of the hidden fears that, as I started talking to guys who play left tackle or receiver or whatever those positions are, Brett Favre, we all have this sort of innate fear. A friend of mine wrote a book called Twin Thieves, and they talk about the fear of failing, the fear of failure, but also the fear of judgment.
Mhm.
And those two things combined, just when we talk about the mental side of this game, it can really, really destroy us. And so that's why the mental part is so important. The physical, you definitely need that, but being able to just kind of compartmentalize and get on to the next play. And the way media is today, everybody has a podcast,
Oh
everybody
yeah.
has, you know, and they're talking about it Sunday to Sunday.
You talked about the trip to Edinburgh. No one I have not I've never talked to anybody who has not hated that trip to and from Edinburgh.
Well,
You
I
know?
don't know if he's still alive, but Jack Rydick used to ride his motorcycle
Right.
all over there.
I remember that.
I'm like, it's a snowstorm. Why are you riding a motorcycle?
It's a snowstorm. It was probably October.
Videotape the game. I'm like, I'm sure you could get on one of these buses.
No, that's classic, man. So, you've had a tremendous career, professional college. Personally, what are some of the highlights? Like, I know you love the teammates, you love the camaraderie, but maybe for you personally, what was something that was really special to you, or even whether it's ship or in the pros?
I think all of it is because none of it was my plight, right? I'm a city boy from DC. Um, this wasn't my path, right? I didn't have a lot of examples growing up to kind of lead me into the different spaces that I would eventually, get in and succeed in. Over the years, I've talked a lot about gratitude, right? They could have picked a lot of people, but they chose me.
Hmm.
So I've always been grateful for that. So, so I think that's been the biggest part because it wasn't the direction that I was brought up in to go that way.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
sorry about that. That was
No,
good.
all right.
No, no, this is good, Rob. This is how much we love this game and the opportunities this game has created. And again, for you, it's been fantastic. And we've enjoyed watching it and
Yeah,
enjoyed it with you. And we are so proud of you, brother.
Oh yeah, we all live vicariously through you.
We do. We do. I'm not lying. We do.
I
yeah.
see I see somebody and I say, "Oh yeah, a buddy of mine. He works for the Raiders. Even though we've only met for the first time tonight."
Hey, throw it out there. Throw it out there. I've been talking about Shippensburg for a long time, and obviously the success that John and Brett Grimes and Ron and some of the other guys had coming behind me has only elevated, Shippensburg, and the fact that we've put out so many players that have played, long, long careers and still have done good things um, within those organizations that they got to be a part of.
Yeah.
And so you think about Brett Grimes and John Kuhn on the same team,
Hmm.
two first team All American players on both sides of the ball. Had a chance to play and see Brett Grimes just a stud of a player. Um, he was a dynamic player, and he would probably, if he was playing today, he'd be a 20-25 million dollar defensive back.
If I could jump in too, just like how did football and maybe like some of the coaches, how did that help shape your life? You said you were kind of not, this wasn't your path, this wasn't where you're going. What got you on this path? Was it path? Was it,
I think just coming to ship and seeing the structure, that's the great thing about education. I always say education provides socialization, right? Prior to coming up there, my world looked a lot like me, right?
Mhm.
Education provides socialization. Socialization provides the confidence, and the confidence is what provides the opportunity. And so I've been a huge proponent of kids going to college, even if it's a 2 year college. I think it's good debt just to have the opportunity to socialize in a different arena, whether you're from Altoona or you're from Washington, D.C. or Cumberland County or wherever you're from, just to get on those college campuses and those locker rooms. Sure, like a Terry Meehan never expected to meet a Rob Davis, right? Be in the same locker room as, in environments like that. And so I just think that, what we were able to accomplish, through athletics has been a big part of my success. The discipline, perseverance, the leaders that I've been around, Coach Reese, Coach Bott, um, you know, Roy O'Neal was one of my D line, Ellsworth, just, Frank Whalen way back in the day, Donnie Fosdick, just so many guys that, indirectly poured into us. And we didn't even know we just spoke before we came on camera about the impact Tom Hoy had, right? You talk about Don Gracie's relationship with the football players up there. Tom Hoy probably had an even bigger relationship because so many of us, when he opened up his bar, became the most popular bar in town during that stretch. And if anybody from '87 to probably 2000, Wibbs was the spot, right? And it was hurtful. I went back a few years ago. I don't get a chance to get back much, but I remember going into Wibbs, and then I said, well, I'm going to go to one of the Sig Tall parties. I think AO, what if there's another one down there next to Sig Tall. I remember us going there, and one of the kids said, "Are you guys the cops?" I think we should just go on back to Wibbs. We may have passed our time here being as the cops. Just the opportunities I've been afforded. I feel like I've positioned myself well. I recall the reason I got into this space that I'm currently in. I remember when Reggie White retired. I played 2 years with Reggie in Green Bay.
Oh,
It
nice.
seemed like we were playing down in Tennessee a lot, in the preseason, particularly. And Reggie White was from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and he came over. We were talking before the game, not just like all alumni. You say, what do you miss most about the game? And obviously the camaraderie in the locker room, the travel. And then I asked him, I say, hey, Reggie, what's been the most difficult part about retiring? He says, Rob, I wake up every day without knowing what I'm going to do.
Hmm.
And that struck something with me. I'm like, you know what? This is Reggie White, Minister of Defense, the
Right.
SAC office, at that time, multimillionaire player. And if he's waking up every day not knowing what to do, what's going to happen to a Rob Davis? And so
Mhm.
I started doing internships and job shadows and just really trying to concentrate on life after football, because they talked about how you lose your money, how you lose your relationship, some of the mental issues we go through. And I wanted to be proactive in that to where I didn't want to have to struggle, mentally, like a lot of my peers have done over the years. And so I really just started concentrating on the transition part of the game, which led me to the player development space, which is the space that I've had the most passion. I've tried a couple different jobs in my time since retirement in '08. I've done organizational development, DEI, worked in corporate America and heavy duty manufacturing space, but all of them have been around the people development space. And it still came back to my time working with the players, particularly rookies in the locker room, as being the most impactful and most gratifying to me.
Rob, it's interesting because I'm approaching retirement. But I read an article one time and it talked about a player, and I can't remember who it was, But he talked about that. He was in the NFL and he played for like 8 years, and now he's done, and he's 30 years old. And it was the same thing. He said, I get up, I take my kid to school, I go to the driving range, hit a few balls, I go to the gym, I'm done, and it's 10 o'clock in the morning. And what am I going to do all day? And it's really an interesting. What do you tell guys? What do you tell guys? How do you help manage that?
Well, it's funny because today I was just building out a survey, right? It starts with give me 3 to 5 things that if the game ended today, I have 30 rookies that I oversee right now as far as their onboarding and development, and 11 are draft picks. And so essentially, maybe 19 guys are going to be asked to go home.
Mhm.
19 to 20 kids will be asked to go home, and football will be over for them. I try to talk to players about, hey man, getting into some of these non-traditional, publicly traded companies where, if you're in an NFL building, your story is not new.
Yeah,
But when I walk into those plants and stuff
yeah,
like that, I'm one of one,
yeah.
right? Every time you tell the story of the Packers or the Bears or Shippensburg, you're the only one that has that story. So it has a little bit more oomph to it.
Mhm.
Unlike an NFL building where everybody kind of has that story. And so just trying to push guys to do internships, job shadows, learning their elevator pitch. What does personal branding look like for them? These guys are making a lot more money now today. When I came in 1993, I think the minimum salary was 98,000. Today, those guys are walking into the NFL at 840,000. So you get you 4 or 5 years, and you pretty much can put yourself in a pretty good position
Mhm.
to kind of do what you want to do from there. And so it's really just trying to get them to see the other side, like that you do have skills and transferable skills and leadership that can transfer to other places. You just have to look somewhere else that not everybody else is looking.
And Rob, I believe when you were in the private sector, you made a big sale to a chief tinner down in Shippensburg, didn't you?
They bought a lot of fire trucks from those.
That's called networking and using your contacts.
Exactly. That's some Shippensburg bonds right there.
They were buying fire trucks long before I went there, but hey, it is impressive to see all of the fire trucks. And I go around the country in different places, and I'm always looking for that oval because I know exactly where it was built and the men and women that built it. A lot of pride within those plants. And I really enjoyed my time there. And had Mike not asked me to go to Dallas with him as his assistant head coach, I probably would have still been in that space.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it that much.
Rob, I got to say this, you got to get ready because everybody, since you've announced you got this new position, has commented it's road trip to Vegas. So everybody, either on threads I'm on or Facebook. So you're going to have a lot of visitors over the next few years.
Well, I'm a diehard Steelers fan, and I wish you the best of luck. Just don't beat Pittsburgh, okay? Rob, anything else you want to talk about? We're about the end of time, but if you got anything else you want to chat about.
And so, yeah, just fond memories, man. I really appreciate what you're doing with the podcast, Rand and Rob. It's a great way to keep us kind of connected. Um, you know, and, what Mac and those guys are doing. I hope that the young players at Shippensburg appreciate the history and the guys that came before them, and our love and respect for that community and that university. It's a special place, man, and um, without those 5.5 years at Shippensburg, I'm not sure that we're having this conversation right now, to be honest with you.
Wow. Great ending there, man. That's a great ending.
Very good.
Rob, thanks a lot for joining us. Rob Clark, also the two Robs. I want to once again thank our sponsor, Blue Ridge Risk Partners, Jeb Keller. And guys, it's been a lot of fun. Rob, you did a great job, man. We hope to see you. Maybe we'll get you in there for a spring game or something one day.
I think our bye week is the same week as homecoming, so I try to plan to come out there.
Oh, that'd be nice.
That'd be great. That would be great.
Nice. We'd love to see you, man.
I say you're coming to Vegas. Come on, we got plenty of hotels. Plenty of hotels out here, and I don't know where the good times are, but I'm sure they're all around us.
They're everywhere. Yeah. All right, man. Thank you very much. Good seeing you.